I'm going to introduce our speakers today. Mike is from Chicago, and Mike is a in-house developer for Synarski, and hopefully I pronounced that right. And Graham is a consultant out of Vancouver, Canada. Mike and Graham did this session at the MW Lug back in August, and I thought it would be a great session to have for our webinars, so I invited Mike and Graham to come speak today. So Mike and Graham, who should get the, I think Graham, you get the presenting rights first, right?
Should go to me, yeah.
Okay. There we go.
And I'm going to, Mike, you've got mouse as well, so there we are. Okay, thanks everybody. Let's get to it. So we're pretty much using the, well, we are using the slide deck that we did at MW Lug, and the title that we used at MW Lug was "Don't Put the Cart Before the Source." So what we're actually going to show you is a shopping cart that we built to demonstrate for kind of learning how to use Java. Very quick intro on me. Over and above what's already been said, I've been in the Lotus Notes game for a long time, primarily focused on application development these days, both with the Social Business Toolkit, or I think it's now called Connections Developers, XPages and mobile. Done a little bit of work with OpenNTF, and I bring up the fact that I'm a cyclist. Got into cycling just a few years ago, and the shopping cart that we've built is for a bike shop, so that's why we make note of that.
Hi, my name is Mike Bagaro. I'm, like Howard mentioned, I work for Synarski. Whoop, I think I hit the button too far.
No, I did it.
Oh, yeah. I've been working with Notes for a while, not as long as some. And I've done a lot of web-based work. Now a lot of my work is Java and XPages, so that's the focus that we're moving at where I work. I've done put out a few snippets on OpenNTF and a couple templates, and my big claim to fame in the community is the work I do for the MW Lug conference. I do a lot of work on the site and keep that going. And we'd like to do a little disclaimer when we start here. We are not experts in Java. Graham and I have been doing a lot of development over the years, a lot of different languages, and we know what we're doing in Java a little bit, enough not to blow things up. But in terms of it, you know, there's so much to Java, and we're just starting. And what we want to show you with this webinar is where we're at now, and the things we've done that have worked, and some things that haven't worked. So we hope it'll be very helpful for you. And jump in.
Yeah, so as I mentioned,
okay.
we had a little bit of fun at MW Lug with several different presentations that all kind of followed the Java development theme, and the presenters, we got together in advance and came up with this fictitious company that we kind of passed the baton back and forth as we went through the presentation, as we went through the conference. So this is our bike shop. It's called Midwest Bicycle Incorporated, and again we're gonna show you the shopping cart that we built.
Okay.
So in terms of the agenda, we'll talk about you know, where to begin in terms of learning Java, talking about from an application development standpoint, kind of planning things out. We'll actually show you the demo, the code, and then share, again, as Mike said, what I'd like to refer to as bruises and bumps and all of those things that we had to learn the hard way. And then we'll share some resources with you and take some questions. We're both advancing there. Okay, so this is, again, for me as a cyclist, this is just an illustration of a picture of where it feels like you're starting. Is the screen refreshed?
Yeah.
We're bouncing back and forth.
Okay. Hold on, let's go.
I'll keep my hands off the keyboard, Mike.
Okay, I'm going to go back.
There we go.
There we go. All right.
And we'll let it refresh to the audience. Beautiful. Okay, so I have yet to tackle a mountain anything like this on my bike, but it's somewhat akin to trying to learn to develop in a new language, and how difficult it might seem as you're starting on the path. And we all start at the bottom, so this is just clearly a message to say that Mike and I have both been here, and we're probably maybe up just past the first or second curve there. By no means at the top of the hill yet, but anyway, everybody starts in the same place. Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Okay. All right. First off, why Java? Why do we want to do something in Java? Why are we both sort of moving to that in our regular jobs? Well, for one, XPages is built on Java. That means it's using Java as it builds the XPages. And if you use server-side JavaScript, it has to convert it to Java. So we're skipping a step if you build within Java. Java is also very popular out there outside of the quote yellow bubble. And it makes you more employable if you know this. If you need to, if your company moves on or you want to move on, it helps you. And also it's faster. That's another big plus as opposed to going through server-side JavaScript. Essentially, since it is more direct, and it's not that difficult to learn because the syntax is similar. For example, on the screen here, we have a loader script. You declare the string and you assign it. And in Java, you do the same thing. So it's the same. It's a type language. So if you're familiar with loader script, you should be able to pick up Java pretty quickly. And I hit the button. Edit again. Let's see.
There we go. So this is probably one of the biggest things that has befuddled me as I've been learning Java. And the screen's taking a moment to refresh.
That why Java screen is very important, but
Well, the message here is that I don't know what I don't know, and this has probably been one of the biggest challenges for me as I've been going along, where, as we say, if you know loader script, learning Java from a language, from a typing standpoint, is reasonably similar. But there are some pretty, I won't say drastic differences, there are some differences that have really snagged me up. And so as you kind of go along and start to learn the language and write a little snip of code here and there, or pull down a sample and run it and try to pull it apart, it starts to make sense. And so in my case anyway, I made some leaps and managed to leap into some brick walls, and it was really quite frustrating. So this is just one of the main messages, is that it's really a matter of kind of taking those baby steps and using the training wheels and carrying on, as opposed to getting on your bike and deciding that you're going to do a 100-mile ride on the first day and not being prepared for what you might face. So for me anyway, the key message here is that I really did get snagged up several times just by problems that were around the corner that I couldn't even anticipate. So it's a matter of taking the time and doing lots of reading, lots of education, and taking those baby steps. Okay, I got to the roadmap, Mike.
All right. I'm not seeing it. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, the screen's taking a ton of refreshing.
Yeah, okay. The roadmap. Luckily with Java, since it is such a popular language and been around a while, there's lots of places to learn it, lots of resources. TLCC is mentioned there, but there's lots of information on different websites, like Stack Overflow is very good for questions and answers of things you'll run into. I've run into things there that have been that directly apply to what I'm doing. There's a lot of people blogging about it. I have to mention No to 9 videos because I like it and because I work with Dave Leedy. So there's also plenty of books. on there, if you work in a large corporation, you might have Java developers, so you might be able to ask them. The Java APIs are out there, so you can study them and learn how things go, what the right syntax is, what the right way to word things, because that can get you. And attending conferences is also a good way to learn it, because then you can talk to the speakers directly, and you can have questions, and you could see some examples and hopefully see some demos like we're going to show.
And I have to point out that the map that you were looking at there was all of the bike routes in Grand Rapids. So again, we were having a little bit of fun with the bike theme.
All right. And speaking of biking and all that, we have a few Java rules of the road for you. The first off, and this is tough coming from if you're really familiar with Lotus script, which is not case sensitive, Java is case sensitive. So that is something to watch out for. And lately, I just assume everything's case sensitive, and no matter what language I'm writing, and that way it doesn't matter what I do. There's a semicolon at the end of each line, like there's here, like JavaScript has that, where you want the semicolon there. In XPages, that doesn't use the absolute latest version of Java. The Java version of XPages, Java 6. So if you're looking at APIs, if you're looking at things, you got to make sure that you're looking at the right version for XPages. And this is something that really got me in terms of the data types. There's a lot more data types for Java than for Lotus script, and there's primitive data types, and there's data types that are part of a class. And there's an example there. There's one called double, and then the one called double, with the lowercase and the uppercase T's. The primitive one does not have any methods, and that's the difference between these types. So the primitive one is just it. Double, the number is just a number. There's nothing associated with it. But a double with the capital D, that has methods that go with it. So with that one, you can, there's various methods and functions that can help you use it. And there's an example on the next screen here. I'm going to switch to that. And there we go. For example, string has 72 methods. So within the string, you can get the byte count. You can pick a particular character within the string, and all that. See in here, you could check if something's equals. That's up there. That could be very important when you're comparing strings.
We'll talk about that later. Yep.
We will talk about that. The length of the strings in there. So there's all these different methods, and the point of this slide is, since there are so many methods, you don't need to write them yourself, and that's a great thing about Java, because there's so many. It's been around so long. There's a lot of people using it. There's a lot of methods already written, and that you don't have to do. There's whole Java libraries. Google has some, and there's a lot of others out there that has some things that you could probably use and need. So you can look those up and get those and modify those if you need them. So that's very helpful. And go to the next slide. There we go. All right, and one thing that we're going to use here, and that's something that's very important, is collections. You're rarely using a single piece of data. There's all these groups, so similar to what Lotus script has, Java has them, but they have a lot more, and they're different. They have different uses. They have different properties. The Java ones fit into the three groups that we have here at the bottom. There's the list, and the main property of that is it stores has a reference number for the index. So it knows what's first, what's second, what's third. And so on. There's a map that has a pairing. So you have a key, and that gets you the value. So you can deliver key, whether it's string or a number or another object or something. Something would be your key, and then it corresponds to value. And when they're set, has no duplicates, so you know that there's only one. So it's a unique list. So that's very helpful. And I went to the next slide. There we go.
Yeah, we'll move into our next section here. So this is really about planning out your application, and I absolutely cannot emphasize this enough because I have just learned this the hard way. Keep it simple. When you're starting to learn a Java application, be critically sure that it is a small enough application that is reasonable to learn. I bit off an application that I thought was reasonably small, and as I got into it, it became bigger and bigger and bigger, and I ended up getting myself into a lot of trouble because I was learning Java at the same time. And just again, I can't emphasize it enough to be very careful about jumping off the deep end. Really pick something small, take your time, learn it, and then move on from there. And this next slide really talks about kind of classic development rules, but again, they apply in this situation. Think about from a design standpoint. You obviously want to think about your application, what the front end is going to look like, the kind of functionality that you're going to build in, and separate out the back-end structure. And this is a little bit different than your typical Lotus script or your traditional notes kind of application, and it actually even is a bit different than kind of how we've all been learning XPages applications and the education that's been out there for us. Java objects and your backend elements, you end up thinking about them a little bit differently than kind of what we would call our traditional forms and views and how we would write our Lotus script. So to take the time to think about how your backend objects are constructed, and this is where people with experience working with Lotus script, even if you've only just been doing procedural Lotus script, you can take the time to understand or think about how you were able to use Lotus script in the past and the objects that were available in Lotus script, and kind of map them in a similar way to what your objects will be. For example, in the application that I'm building, in the case of the cart, we're going to show in a second here that we've got a cart object and we've got a cart item object and an order object and how they all fit together. So we'll take you through that. But then also to separate out your front-end code from your back-end code and what happens when you click a button or fill in a value on the screen and what happens behind the scenes. And there's lots and lots of resources out there that will help with that, and we'll show a little bit of that too. Lo and behold, we have our screen that talks about our class design. So what we did, when Mike and I talked about putting together this presentation and talked about the shopping cart, we actually just bashed around our ideas on what that would look like, and we actually started with the screens and said what screens would we need and broke it down from there. And what we ultimately ended up with is that in a session you will have an order, and inside the order will be a shopping cart, and inside the shopping cart there'll be multiple items that you can add and you can remove, and you can change, for example, the quantity if you wish or what have you. So we were able to kind of break those apart. Interestingly enough, as we got into what the methods and what the properties of those objects would be, we ended up changing our minds a few times over how it would all work. So, trying out one particular collection type and going ahead thinking, yep, we've got that planned out properly, and then getting so far in and realizing, okay, that's not going to work, and stepping back again. One of the other things that came up as we sort of decided how our application would work was we realized that we would need some utility classes, some things for example, if we wanted to send an email notification after the order was placed, which we didn't write, but from a planning standpoint would say, okay, that would be a reasonable function for our application to have, but it doesn't necessarily make sense to put that functionality in our order class, so we would separate that code out to a separate class for utilities. And of course a catalog, right? We need some object that will hold all of the items that a user could select. So we would need to have a separate class for that. So again, it's an illustration of sort of thinking about your application, what the screens are, what the functionality is, and then start to work that back towards, okay, what are the things behind the scenes that I'm going to need in order to support how the application is going to work. Mike, I think this is you, isn't it?
Could be. We're going to when you create these classes, there are two parts to them. There's the properties and the methods. And the properties would be the kind of the values that can be associated with the class. And there's examples here, you know, and with the unit price, there's also maybe the name of the item, whether you know, weight possibly, and that's the kind of things that would be important for shopping cart. And within the methods, there's and the XPages can do this. It can build the getters and the setters. So get this value and set the certain value. You know, set weight, get weight, that sort of thing. So you can have a lot. You can have a lot of those, and you can also have some custom ones where you can go through, if you're within a cart, maybe go through all the items and total up the prices or total up the weight. So you could do that yourself. So the class would contain all the information needed for that object. And I'm going to the next one here. Okay. And now we're going to talk about Java Beans, because our cart uses Java Beans, and we're going to talk about what that is. And Java Bean is an object that meets these 5 standards here. All right. For one, it's a public class, and we're going to have samples of all this. We're going to show you what we mean by all this here. So it's declared as public, so it's available to the outside. Serializable, and that means it can be saved. Whatever state it's in could be saved and written to disk and then brought back. So you can keep it and bring it back whenever you need it. There's the properties of it are private. All right, now it doesn't have to have any properties. It's kind of silly to not have any, but the properties you do have to be private, so they're not available outside the class. It needs a public constructor, so it's just a name, and the name can't have any arguments, so it has to have one like that. And finally, all the methods that are in there, the getters and setters and the calculate costs, if you have that, those kind of things, they need to be public. So other classes from outside this class can get to it. So we're going to have a little, okay, so here's an example. All right, so this is kind of the outside of the bean here. So first you declare what package this belongs to. Normally it's a reverse of the URL that you're getting there. In this case, com, MBI, if there was a site from Midwest Biking, MBI, and then shopping, you know, so everything's falling into that library here, com, MBI, shopping. We need to import any libraries that the class needs to work. In this case, we definitely need serializable, because the class has to implement serializable. So we need that. If there's other libraries, if there's date classes, maybe we have to load, you know, the Java date classes, Java util.date, or that sort of thing. So anything else needs to be in there for importing. And then finally, this is where you declare the public class, the class called sample, and we need to implement serializable. So that's what we mentioned earlier. So this takes care of a couple things right there. Then on the next slide, so as we going to zoom in here to the inside of the bean, and I hit the button. All right. There we go. I think we went too far. Oh, good. Yeah. Oh, yes, we did. Okay, let's get to the inside of the bean. I'll go back. Sorry about that. Okay, now the inside of the bean, this is a very simple example. example here, but it has everything we need. For the serializable, there needs to be a number here. Now, by default, it's this 1L, but it could be any long number that you want to put in there. Some people use that to keep track of versioning, so you can put in different numbers there. And finally, we have a private property, so the string called my text. Right? This is underneath that is your public constructor. So public sample, it has no arguments to it. Then there's there's a getter and a setter in there. So these are the public methods that the bee needs. And and this allows you to get to that private property. It allows you to read the property with the get and to change it with the set. All right, and that's it. So that's bean. That's the basics of a bean. That's the minimum. And of course, when you start using it, they grow quite a bit. But
yeah, I was going to say that's not terribly exciting, but it just illustrates for those of you that haven't seen Java before, that's really nothing terribly fun, but it does illustrate the basic building blocks of what a Java bean is. Yeah.
All right.
So I think we're going to do demo next, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so let me switch over to the demo. Okay, so our demo has two screens, and the first screen includes the shopping cart and the catalog and the functionality that allows us to actually add items to the cart. So simply click the button. Let me just do a quick reload here. Click the button and the item is added to the shopping cart, and we can change the quantity if we want. And when we tab out of that field, there's so the code runs to actually change the value on the screen. This is happening in Java behind the scenes. We can add another bike to our shopping cart. We can remove all of the items from our cart if we want and start again, and choose a different bike, change the quantity, and once we're done, we can check out and we come to our checkout screen. Now, again, not a lot of functionality here, nothing terribly exciting, but what we want to do is illustrate what's actually going on behind the scenes. We've got a button here that allows us to edit our order, to go back to our order screen. If we wanted to get really exciting, we could put paging in for a catalog, but again, that wouldn't really add much value here other than to illustrate, our goal was to illustrate being able to add items to the cart and being able to check out.
Yeah, this is not a UI that we recommend, but this is a good example.
Simple.
Simple. Yeah. So.
Okay, so that's it, and it's not overly complicated, and as I went back and said before, there was enough work that went into building this that it was a great opportunity to learn, and wasn't too overwhelming that we got into areas that we couldn't manage to work our way out of, which isn't necessarily the case on the other application that I was working on, but we won't dig into that at all. Okay, so let's illustrate what's actually going on behind the scenes here. Mike, this one yours?
Okay. Yeah. We're gonna kind of start in the middle there. If you remember our outline, it was an order, and then the shopping cart, and then the item. So, but first we're going to talk about the shopping cart class that we have. The two properties that are in there we're going to talk about. There's the actual cart, what contains all the items, and in this case we're using what's known as a linked hash map, and it's a map, so it's a key and a value, so it has that, and we're keeping this, and the key is the string, and the string is the ID number of the product from the catalog, so that makes it easy to find. All right, so that's our easy reference. And then we have a total cost that's this number value called big decimal. Now, when I was doing research for the carts, big decimal seemed to be a great way to work with currency. So that's why I picked that one. All right, so
Mike, I think it's important to point out the cart item in the linked hash map?
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I forgot that. The string, that's our key. The value is actually another object called a cart item. So this map contains, this map object contains other objects in it, and you can layer object on top of object or within object as much as you want. And that's one of the great things about Java is you have that power and that flexibility to do that.
Maybe for people who, for people who are on that understand LotusScript, think of it as a notes document collection, right? So a notes document collection is an object that happens to have a collection of notes document objects inside of it. This is the same thing.
Yeah. All right. So now the reason for this linked hash map that we picked it kept the insertion order. So as you added things in, it just put the new items at the bottom. And that way, as you're adding things, you know, as the customer would know, you know, oh, I just added that. Okay, that's at the bottom. That's there. So it keeps that order. You might want it alphabetical. I mean, that'd be another option, and that'd be something else that you could do, maybe alphabetical by product name or something, and you could set that up. But with this, we just want to keep the insertion order. We like that key value structure so we can store cart items because there's a lot of value, there's a lot of different properties within the cart items that we want to display and be able to reference. So we wanted that. We also wanted to show, as a reference, we also wanted to use this for other parts of the page. For example, that add to cart button, if after you pick something, it goes away and there's just text that says added to cart. So it kind of checks that. So when you refresh the page, and it checks that by looking in the hash map and saying, oh, is this ID in there? If it is, don't display the button because it's already in there. If you want to add more, just change the quantity. So that's why we picked that. But there's reasons to use other kinds of collections. This is the reason that we picked those, and this really falls into that planning part. And you have a lot of options with Java. And sometimes you just explore and see if it works, and if it does, then keep going with it. Otherwise, find something else that works better for you. All right, so next page. There. Okay. All right, and some of the methods that we're using with this linked hash map is the contains key. So is the key there? That's how that button's getting rendered or not. That's how it checks to see if the key's there. Is empty says, oh, the cart's empty. So then you can keep the count going, or maybe not even display a link into the cart. You can check that. The size says here's how many items are within the cart. So then you could display that number on the screen. You can tell people how many things are in there. The values gets you the values. Put is the one where they actually fills up the cart. So it puts in your key and your value in there. So when you hit that add button, it calls that put method. And there we go. So here's some of the buttons in the code. And so in this the add to cart button, it gets the product ID from that column. We're using just a view to get the items. We're not using an actual catalog object at all in this demo. So the button only renders if it contains the key of if inside the cart there is no key for the product ID. So that's that add to cart button. All right, and then the event handler. What happens when you click on it? It gets the product ID. Right. So then it gets the product, and it loads a new cart item. It adds the cart item with the name and the ID and the price. So it kind of creates the cart item will show on the fly. and puts it into the cart. So, and then it refreshes the screen because the refresh mode is partial. And next page here. Okay. All right. So this is there's a little more. This is the actual class, or part of the class anyway. So this shows that when you create the shopping cart, which gets created when you start a new order, kind of creates a new shopping cart. So it creates a blank linked hash map, and then the new does a total cost to 0. And as you add the cart item, it gets all those gets the 4 arguments and creates a cart item with those arguments. And then the method, after it puts it in the cart, it calls the method calc total cost, which kind of calculates all the costs within the shopping cart. So it always does that, and that's how it keeps that running total up to date. All right. And then going to the next one.
Yeah. So now this is the cart item. So this is each of the items that gets put into the shopping cart. We've got a separate object to manage those. And really the whole idea there is that we're pulling the necessary information from the catalog and displaying it on the screen. We hold it in the class object in order to display on the screen. So it's really pretty simple, right? We've got an item name, an item ID, a price, a quantity, and a cost. Nothing terribly complicated here. And this is just an illustration of the getters and setters that we have. So the fun thing is, as Mike mentioned earlier, the Domino Designer gives you the ability that once you decide what properties your class will have, you can use Domino Designer based on the elements of Eclipse that have been included to automatically generate these pieces of code. So your class needs to give you the ability to read the value in the property and set the value in the property. And then you write all the additional code, as Mike just illustrated, to do the other work that your object needs to do. So the getters and setters are really kind of minor, if you will. You need to have them. Domino Designer will create them for you. You don't have to worry about them after that. When we want to load a cart item, in the shopping cart class, we create a new cart item object and we pass in some values. So there's a function that we wrote called load, and we designed it. Mike actually wrote this code, designed it so that it would take the values that we want to load up, and then we pass that in, and we call all of the setters in order to populate those values into that property. Into the properties of the class. Again, nothing terribly complicated here, and I really can't stress enough. I've already said it, but simple is really okay when you're learning this stuff. Start simple, start easy, and then go from there. Now we've set up the order class as a managed bean. Mike, you can talk about this one. Okay.
Yeah, because we wanted a managed bean to always be there and to kind of be there whenever we want it, and kind of make it easy on ourselves when we're writing the code. So the managed bean is really a bean that's kind of placed within this faces config file. So it's referenced in there, so then when the application always knows there, so as soon as you reference it by whatever name you give it, it's just there. So it makes it very handy. It makes the coding simple. You don't have to create a new one somewhere on the page. It's just there. And the nice thing is there's only one. Once you create it, it's there. And there's only one of them, so you don't have to worry about where is it, and if I load it on this page, oh no, it's not there. But that's the nice thing. The other thing is, though, there is only one, so if you need 2 or 3 or 4 orders, then you can't have the managed bean. So within the faces config, you can, and it's pretty easy to set up. So you just kind of have to follow this. You have the name, so we're just calling it order. You put in the class, so that the file name basically is in there, the class name's in there, and then whatever the scope is. So there's the 4 scopes. There's the application scope, so it's available to everyone using the application. It's the session scope, which is for the particular user and that session. There's the view scope, which is essentially that particular page, and there's request scope, which is just that call to the page. So that's it. In this case, the order we want this to be in session scope so that it can go from page to page and only apply to that particular user. So session scope fit very well to what we were doing in terms of an order. And next page, okay. And finally, the order class has the shopping cart property in it. So in our case, we put the shopping cart within the order because we wanted to keep them together. And this way, when we load the order, it automatically loads a shopping cart. So we wrapped methods for easier access, like it says. So we created the cart, and then we gave a name of cart. And so we have this add cart item method that goes and gets the cart and runs the method called add cart item in the shopping cart. So they just happen to have the same name, and they wouldn't have to, but I made it easier to know what to reference it. So we just have these wrapper methods so that it'd be easy to get to the shopping cart, and that way we can keep it within the order, and we can call it from that managed bean then. So, and the order would have more information. For example, the person's name, the address you're shipping to, all that other extra information will be in the order, but that's not part of the demo. That's in there.
Okay. Now, Mike, you posted the actual notes database that we built on your blog, didn't you? Yeah. So this is available for people to. It's as I'm following along here. If you don't know Java, this is going to be a bit confusing. So it's of value to know that you can actually grab the code and pull it apart and kind of see how it all sticks together. Right. And so here we move on to the next part of the presentation, which, as far as I'm concerned, is probably more important. And again, this is the flat tires, as it were, that we've experienced along the way. Mike, this one was yours.
Okay. Well, I had a lot of problems with just the number field, and I think this is a good case of starting small because you don't really know what's out there. And I would never have guessed that a number field would cause me so much trouble, but because Java has different kinds of numbers, integers and doubles and big decimals and all that stuff, it got to be an issue because when I was looking at the field value on my page, that field value was the equivalent to a Java double, and I was treating it like an integer, and I kept getting an error message telling me it is not an integer, and I'm saying, well, yes, it is. It's a 1 or a 2. It is an integer. That's the value in there, but it's not. It's a Java double class. So that's what you need to. So when you're using a numbers field from your HTML page in XPages, you should start off with treat it as a Java double, because that's the way that XPages treats it. And I couldn't, it wasn't giving me a Java error because it was actually kind of an XPages error. It was the conversion from the JavaScript into Java. So it was kind of tricky to find.
Maybe that's worth touching on just quickly, the system.out.println and why you would use that.
Okay. Well, you can use that to. Well, that's like the print statements in Lotus script, because you could write to the console and see where things are. So it's a way of debugging. I mean, not the best way to debug, but it's kind of simple and it's right there.
I use it.
Yeah. it's very handy because then you can, you know, just like with the print statements, you can see where things are breaking if they are. So yeah, this is very helpful. That system.out.println is used that quite a bit.
And for those that maybe haven't seen it, Howard has posted a link to Mike's blog in the chat window.
Oh, okay. All right.
Next one.
Right. Next one.
I'll let you advance it.
Oh, okay.
Date field. So this
Okay.
one's mine, and as much trouble that Mike had with numbers, I've had with dates, and dates I think are reasonably well known amongst Java developers in the Domino community as being a serious pain in the backside. A notes date time class, if you will, Java equivalent, doesn't play or map very well to how Java handles dates. And interestingly enough, the pure date class that was originally built for Java is essentially no longer used. I think the folks developing Java over the years realized that the initial implementation didn't give them the flexibility that they needed, and so the date class in Java has essentially been replaced by something called the calendar class, or a calendar object. So I've had some interesting times learning what calendars are, what you can do with them, and how you can interact between a calendar object in Java and a notes datetime object in Notes and Domino. And I am here to tell you that the calendar class is really, really cool. There is definitely a learning curve to understand what it's all about, but once you get it figured out, it is really neat. So this is the code that's on the screen here was actually shared with me by Sidar Besamez, and it's a call into Notes to say, here's the document, and this is the field name that I want. Bring me back the notes date time value and convert it into a calendar and return the calendar back. So this is code that that basically helps do that translation between what the notes object is and what the Java object is. This next screen, while it loads, is a little piece of code that I came up with that I was quite proud of. The particular application that I was building, you needed to see tomorrow's data, if you will. So for whatever the current date is when the screen loaded, I need to figure out what tomorrow was. And of course, if it was a Friday or a weekend, I needed to say, well, it should be Monday. And normally you might think that that was a lot of code, and in fact when I wrote the pseudocode it had some considerable code behind it, and once I managed to get the hang of the calendar object, I managed to realize that that I could achieve what I was looking for quite simply, and Stack Overflow actually helped me come up with this code here. So it's quite fun. The calendar object has as a property a value of Friday, which is actually a number. But you can just say, give me Friday, and it figures out what that actual value should be and returns it back to you. So it's kind of fun to interact with the calendar object in Java that way. And this little piece of code that I've highlighted down here as the screen loads, this gives us the ability to do that conversion back again. So in this particular case, I'm saving some data back to Notes. And so I take that calendar and create a notes date time based on it. So it's not that hard. It was difficult to figure out, but once I got it figured out, it's relatively easy. And the main message here is that dates are treated slightly differently than anything else, strings or other values that you're going to have, other properties. You have to just remember to have to do that conversion. Again, lots of road rash and bumps and bruises as I figured that out, but now that I've got it handled, I'm comfortable with it. The next lesson learned, or this is more of a good advice, if you will, is to use something called a try-catch block. And if you've never heard of what one of those are before, I put down that it's something that you can use to manage errors, but it's more than that. Again, it's different than Lotus script. it basically gives you the ability to say, run this code, and if you run into a problem, here's how we're going to handle that problem. But you can also say, run this code, and if you run into a particular circumstance, potentially something that you maybe could anticipate happening depending on the logic of your application, you can manage that particular circumstance separately than all the rest of your code. So one of the things that I found is as I got going, I didn't know the real need for a try-catch block, and so I just started writing my code. And of course, once I started running into bugs and errors and was doing debugging and stuff like that, it didn't take me too long to get introduced to a try-catch block and how it could be of value, and so I use those religiously now. So it's just a good best practice to always wrap your code in try-catch blocks so that you can handle some sort of an error, similar in LotusScript to on error go to, yet more flexible than what we used to be able to do in LotusScript.
And this is a good place to write system.out.println if you need it.
Yes.
As you test your code out.
Absolutely. Is this me or you? I think it's mine.
Yeah, I think it's me here.
This was another lesson that I learned just recently with the application that I'm working on, where I was introduced to managed beans, thought, okay, this makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and build my application using these, and managed to realize that I had taken the wrong approach. Just like Mike said, where the cart, you want the cart to be available as soon as the screen loads. So it makes sense to be a managed bean, and you only ever want to have one of them. I'm sorry, the order. You only want to have one order per session, per browser session. So it makes sense to have that as a managed bean. But it doesn't make sense to have all of the cart items as managed beans because they don't need to instantly be in memory. You're going to create them. You're going to add them to your shopping cart class. So don't, they are Java objects just like your order is a Java object, but they aren't instantaneously available to the application. So this is one of those just best practices is again to think about the structure of the application, when do you need the information to be available in the application, and if it should be available all the time, then build it as a managed bean, but otherwise be very careful about how you do it. One of the things that I was going to add when Mike was talking about the faces config and how you would turn on the order to be a managed bean, in our particular example, one of the things that we could have done if we wanted to is to build that catalog class and make it a managed bean, because the catalog is always the catalog. So we could build it, put it in as even an application scope object, provided that if there's not regular additions to the catalog, and make that available as a managed bean too. So that's an example of where you could do that. Bottom line is you need to be very careful and really think about just the structure and design of your application. And from a memory management standpoint and a variety of other reasons, not everything should be a managed bean. This was another little tip at the bottom there about copying from one scope to another. I haven't really experienced this personally, but I was warned quite emphatically that if you copy or take a value from a managed bean and put it into another managed bean, depending on the scope of both those beans, you could seriously blow up your server. So looking at the list in the above bullet, where with request scope at the bottom and application scope at the top, you can move up the list if you're pulling objects from one scope to another, but you can't move down the list. That was just a word of warning that was passed on to me, so I thought I would share it with everybody. Oh, I got another one here. This one I really like. This is something called To Do, and it's a really neat little feature of the development environment. If you put inside of a comment the word To Do, no space, it marks in your UI, your developer in Domino Designer, just a little reminder that says, hey, this is something that you've said you want to come back to. So as you're building the structure of your application, you could make little notes to yourself about remembering to do something, whether that's to write the entire block of code or to remember to change some value or whatever it happens to be, write some documentation. And I point out over on the side of the screen here that these, wherever you put to do in your code, it puts a little mark on the scroll bar so that you can just click to it and come right to it. And then over on the other side here, it gives you the ability to check that to do off and essentially mark it as complete. So it's just a neat little thing that's in the development environment that helps you remember things that you need to do. So I've used it. It's quite neat. Okay, this one, absolute bane of my existence. This is where I'm very careful when we said earlier that learning Java isn't that hard because the syntax looks very similar to Lotus script. Boy, this one absolutely twisted my mind. So this is a string comparison line of code, and the first box at the top is what it would look like in Lotus script. So you can say if the string is equal to Schwinn, then go off and do something or other. Really simple, used it a lot. The word of caution is it does not work the same way in Java. And I actually went ahead and did this, and it I'm depressed to say how long it took me to finally figure it out. You cannot do the same thing in Java, even if you use the double equal sign, which is a comparison operator to say is this value the same as that value. The reason is in the Java box in the middle, the line of code in the middle here, the str_name variable, if you will, is an object. It's not a literal. So that object is not the same as the string trek or Schwinn or whatever. It's a property of the object. So the last block of code there's a method in the string object in Java that says equals, and that's the equivalent of where we were doing it in Lotus script. You say this string object, if it's equal to this literal value, that's the way that you want to write the code. So please, I hope I save well, everybody on the call, even if I save you 10 minutes of development time, it'll be worth it because it cost me a whole lot more to just go off and remember it. And when I finally found it, I found it in Stack Overflow. And the person said, this is something that really confuses people who are new to development in Java. So this is probably one of the biggest things to remember in all of the cool tips that we're passing along. Okay, Mike. Okay.
We found some good resources. I mean, there's so many of them out there. So we narrowed down just a few here. There's a great tutorial on collections. And like we mentioned earlier, you're always going to use collections. You're always going to use groups of data and all that. So it's great to know the different ways that you can handle them. So that's we want to pass along that link. This book, Head First Java, a book Graham and I really like a lot. It's written in a great style. It's not dry like a normal reference book. A lot of great examples in there. It's just a great book. The whole Head First series is great, but we both really liked Head First Java. It's very helpful. And next page, some website links like the Java 6 API. I mentioned No 2.9 videos. To me, it's always great to see things on screen and how it's built. That makes a big difference. OpenNTF has a lot of great Java code on it. Collaboration Today is a lot of news about what's going on in the IBM world. That's great. Stack Overflow, fantastic for questions and answers. I'm in there all the time. And if you do a search in Google search, a lot of times your first link is somewhere in Stack Overflow. And the site How to Program with Java. Got great information in there too. We posted some blogs here from the community of people that have mentioned Java and have some great Java examples in there. This is not an all-inclusive list, certainly, because people out there doing Java, there are a lot of people out there doing that, and the list grows more and more. It seems like more XPages developers are moving to Java as sort of a backend because it is faster. It does provide you more flexibility. And Fine. Well, the next one
So
here.
this is me in all of my cycling glory. I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that I've done something called the Ride to Conquer Cancer, which is a bike ride from Vancouver to Seattle to raise money for cancer research. And interestingly enough, I'm missing one of the photos. I've done it 5 times, and you would think after riding 250 kilometers or 150 miles after 2 days that you'd be pretty exhausted, but the feeling of crossing the finish line is absolutely wonderful, and I always seem to have enough energy to lift my bike over my head when I'm done. And again, when you finish a piece of code that actually works, I think we've all had this experience already before, but you get the same kind of feeling. One other thing that I wanted to add, I'm just going to skip back quickly in the resources. We made note of under OpenNTF, the OpenNTF Domino API. And without spending a lot of time on this, I want to make people aware of it. This is something that a lot of the people listed on this page are actively contributing to. And it's essentially an API that gives us the power of all of the recent functionality of Java in the Lotus Notes world. There was a Java API written for Lotus Notes, probably more than 15 years ago, and the group of folks at OpenNTF who are contributing to this are really just kind of modernizing it and adding a lot of power to it. So without having sort of any bias one way or the other, all I will say is that it's something worthwhile to look into. Both Mike and I have used it. There is a learning curve to it, and it's growing considerably. In fact, there's a new release that is pending. I won't say, I have no idea when it's coming, but there's a lot of talk right now amongst the contributors who are continuing to develop it. So it is of value to look into and decide if it's something that you would like to use. You do not need it. It does give you some things that make life a whole lot more efficient than just straight out of the box Domino Java development. So it's worth looking into.
Okay.
Okay, I think we're ready for questions, Mike. And okay, let me just switch presenter over to myself. Okay, so just a reminder about asking questions. There is a questions pane in the GoToWebinar interface. If you don't see that, you should then see a tiny little ribbon bar. Might be over on the right side, and you click on that orange arrow that's pointing to the left, and it will expand and show the GoToWebinar interface, and you'll see the questions. One of the questions we always get is, will this webinar be available later? And yes, it will be recorded, and we will send out a link to everyone who registered, whether you attended or not, with the slides and the YouTube link as well. So that will be available. Just to add some of my personal experiences with getting into Java and writing an application similar to what Mike and Graham did. Actually, it's one that if you've been to the TLCC site, you might have seen because it's our course catalog. This is all driven by a managed beans application scope, so it's all in memory, so switching among the different versions or selecting a different topic happens very quickly. And one of the things that I also learned in starting out doing this was that I actually started and created this first as a Java application. So Domino Designer is built on Eclipse. So in Domino Designer you have a Java perspective. That's under the window menu option, and you can go to that Java perspective and create a Java application and create a what's called a main Java program, and in that code you could also then add your different classes. Like Mike had the cart item, and they used the shopping cart object. So the card item, you could build that card item and populate it with just some dummy data. You don't have to get it from Domino, and use that. Your only interface is going to be printing to the console, but that's fine. You can kind of really start to flesh out your data model in the Java application, as opposed to doing it and trying to integrate it into an XPage and using the XPage to display things. Do it all as a Java application. Just print out to the console and kind of get back to basics. It makes it a lot easier to debug. You can use the Java debugger, and at some point in time, then you move it to your actual NSF Domino application and integrate it into your XPage. But that's something I found saved me a lot of time. So Paul, do you have some questions lined up? Oh, and while we're taking your questions, we'll just put up some upcoming events. For those of you in Europe, there's the Engage conference has been announced in Ghent. You can go ahead and register for that now. That's Theo always puts on a great 2 days of content, and it's in a great place as always. So, and also just a reminder that if you want to learn more about Java, we do have a sale going on the Java courses for XPages at the TLCC site. So Paul, did you have some questions?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions first. One from Rick. For the demonstration that they can download from your website there, Mike, what version of Notes Domino is required to run that demo?
Actually, we have, we wrote it in 9. We both in 9. But I don't know if it would run in 8.5.3 or not.
Didn't we had somebody at MWLUG ask for it in 8.5 and we converted it to 8.5. I wonder whether we posted
that's on your page, Mike. You have a link to both 9 and 8.5.
I have to look at my page. Yes, you're right, Graham. Right. So it's 8.5.3 and 9.
Okay. Another quick question. This one is from Alan. That to-do feature that you showed, is that only available for your Java classes, or is that available in your Lotus script as well?
Oh gosh, that's an awesome question. I've never tried it in Lotus script.
I don't think it works.
I think it's just in Java.
Yeah, I think that's an Eclipse thing.
Yeah.
That's part of the Java editor.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a question. It disappeared from me. Oh, here it is. A question from Pooja. Now he asked, can I have a type ahead on an edit box control return a Java object? So I think there's a couple ways to interpret that if you guys want to take a shot.
Type ahead, return a Java object. I'm thinking yes, because you could do the type ahead, and then it can load on your refresh. You could have a method to load an object then.
Yes.
So
yeah, you could do an onChange.
You could do that. Yeah. Yes.
The other thing too is remember that the managed beans, you can use the expression language. You could bind a control to a bean property.
Right. Yeah.
So that would be another option of doing that. And of course, you could get the choices from your managed bean as well, or a Java bean.
Object.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. A couple of questions related to the objects and how this fits into the various Java objects and how that Java code fits into your NSF container. So can we get a comment, maybe show a screen of Domino Designer with the Java code classes and maybe the jars as well? Does anyone have that?
Let me see if I can find it.
Well, while Graham's doing that, why don't we move on to another question. For string comparison, is it preferable to say, this is kind of, you have to listen up here, Schwinn, let's say in quotes, dot equals, and then parentheses, the string name variable. to avoid a null pointer exception.
Yeah,
you run across that?
actually, yes, yeah. It would be better if you have the known, if you have a known object, that would be better there because that would avoid the null.
Okay, thanks. And then, Graham, are you ready with the screen?
Momentarily.
Oh, okay, we'll take another question.
I've got a question from Chad. Can you use a Java class that you've created in both XPages and in a scheduled Java agent?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
No, I don't think you. Well, you
know.
put in as a design element. You could put the Java class on your system.
I think you can't there. I think those are separate JVMs for your Java agent and your XPages JVM, and I don't think the one or the class can be accessed from your Java agents. I'll verify that. I think we have that in our Java 1 course.
Okay, I'm good to go.
Okay, let's switch presenter over to you, Graham.
Okay, and as this is coming up, I've got Domino Designer open, and from the menu I've selected code and then gone down and selected Java. So the screen should be refreshed. So this is what we're looking at over on this side, and we've got our 3 objects in the list. And if we go down to our faces config, there's our order, just as Mike showed the code. So to see, what did we want to show? Just how they kind of work together, right?
Yeah.
And also the containment, where you would, import a third-party jar file. And
oh yeah, okay, of course.
So
I just want to bring that screen up. So again, we've got cart items contained within the shopping cart object, which is contained within the order object. And the screen's taking its time to refresh. Sorry about that. All right.
Okay. So we have the package name there. So all these items are part of the same package. So that's the first thing in there. So those 3 Java classes would all belong in that com.mwlog.ab107.
There's all 3 of them.
Okay. And then these are the libraries that we've imported for this class. And
now what you'll notice here, sorry, just quickly, these are all pure Java utilities. There's nothing Domino related going on here. All of these are utilities that we use with Java.
And I was going to say, if you have a method and you start using a collection or linked hash map, and you don't import that, it will give you an error message. So if you comment that out, it should say, or somewhere it should mark that. Yeah.
Brings up lots of errors.
So that's a nice thing about Domino Designer. If you're missing something, it'll let you know.
The other thing that's neat about Designer is that you select an object or a variable, and it highlights all of the instances and actually shows them to you in the sidebar here of where they exist in your code.
And this class shows a lot of the wrapper methods and shows something that belong just within part of the order, like the calc total cost that you have on the screen, where it loops through all the items and adds the values in the cart.
Okay, so the order contains a shopping cart object that we call cart.
Right.
Now, we don't actually import that. Maybe we can talk about why we don't import that.
And let's go. We don't import that because that's part of the same package. We don't need
Right.
to. It knows it's there.
Actually, oh, there's a good illustration here. So this is where we imported Domino session database and document as the Java packages, and Domino Designer is saying, hey, you don't use this ever. So this is another kind of neat feature of Domino Designer, where if you have something that you're pulling into your code and Designer can figure out that you don't need it, it'll tell you.
And the reason that it's in there is if in the future we want to save these items as documents and save the order as a document and kind of keep them all together to make it easier to get the information later, to do reports on it, that sort of thing. So that's one way of storing them would be as documents. So that's kind of direction that we were heading because it's the simplest thing. So again, don't start trying to save, trying to do too much in one step. We were just working with getting the shopping cart working, getting UI working right.
Okay, so
Graham, while I have you there with Designer, I've got a question from Vanessa. Can I import Java code into XPages? Where would I do that? Can you show us?
And I'm just reading the other question that asks about how to hook this all back into XPages. So good question. So let's go to the X page. So the catalog page. Be worthwhile showing it on the source here. Mike, point me in the right direction.
Okay. All right. So the where we're getting to Java, there's a button event where it says paragraph 1, the add to cart button.
Yep.
That's one place
right
where
here.
we're calling the Java. All right. The order, since the term order is the managed bean, that's the order. So we reference it. The last line of this data, right there. So that shows the button, the add to cart button, if that particular item's not in the cart already.
So to answer the question, how do we connect it to the X page? In this particular case, the way that we're doing it is through faces config and making it a managed bean. So by putting this code and saying this particular object, again, just the order object, is a managed bean, you don't have to do anything else before you can start using that, the methods and properties of that particular object in your X page. Now, interestingly enough, we're saying add cart item here, right? So what we're doing is we're passing in the values to the order object. So if we go back to the order object and we say add cart item,